The Pokemon World Championships 2025 have officially wrapped up, and Gardevoir, of course, won the entire event as to be expected. This is a deck that has been dominating all season. A lot of people kind of counted it out as the winner of this tournament, but of course, in the end, it was Gardevoir that managed to take the crown. Surprisingly, Gardevoir actually wasn't that dominant throughout the event. We didn't see a whole lot of the top players playing Gardevoir, except for the usual Gardevoir players like Isaiah Bradner, Henry Chow, and those players, and instead we saw a ton of Gholdengo and some other decks that have been very strong in the format. So today I want to give you guys a quick recap of the Pokemon World Championships for the trading card game in case you missed anything, and kind of give you all the big storylines, all the big stuff that happened throughout the events, day 1, day 2, and championship day Sunday. So of course, let's go ahead and get into it, and go ahead and let me know in the comments what your favorite moment of the weekend was. So starting off with day 1, of course, we have the meta share, the breakdown of all the top decks in the room, and of course Gholdengo takes the crown for the most played deck. This was a deck that a lot of people going into this event knew was going to be very strong. The question was, would it be enough to win the entire thing? Obviously the answer was no, but we did see most top players choosing to play Gholdengo, so it was kind of expected to see a lot of Gholdengo. I don't think anyone expected 23% of the day 1 meta share to be Gholdengo, but yeah, basically 1 in every 4 players was playing Gholdengo. Now the thing about this is that it wasn't just like a straightforward Gholdengo that we saw across the board. We saw so many different variations of this deck, a lot of really unique combos that actually ended up on stream too, so we had a chance to kind of see these play out on stream. We obviously had plenty of examples of the traditional Gholdengo build, which relies on the Energy Search Pro and Gholdengo as your main attacker with options like Scizor in the deck, but we saw quite a few people opting for the Joltik and Gholdengo combo, kind of a combination of Joltik box and Gholdengo. So basically it involves Joltik powering up Iron Hands as an attacker, while you also have the option to attack with Gholdengo itself. This build typically utilizes cards like Levencia to be able to cycle back energy cards. And this is kind of more of a hybrid deck that allows you to hit hard and also be able to hit some of the smaller Pokemon for double the prize cards. We also saw John Ang's build of the Chansey Exchange Ticket and Academy at Night combo. This was kind of a unique tech just to kind of get around some of the matchups, and especially like the Ditto matchup, just to kind of offset the prize cards. So it's a little bit of luck involved, yeah, involving the Chansey, but he did actually prize it on stream, which was really cool to see. He ended up flipping for it, but ended up getting tails. But essentially with this, you're able to basically put Chansey on top of your deck with Academy at Night, and then play the exchange ticket to move it into your prize cards, and then whenever you take the prize card, you are able to flip to potentially get an extra prize card. It's a really cool, unique way to kind of manipulate the prize card race and kind of take that early advantage or that late game victory against your opponent. We also saw Piper's build with a Togekiss. This is one that we've seen kind of in the past. It's kind of, you know, made its way out, I would say. We don't really see it too often anymore, the Togekiss build, but we did get to see it on stream. Unfortunately, we'll kind of get to Piper's run in a little bit, which was very impressive, but ended kind of tragically. But we did get to see that on stream as well. There was also a few builds that played the Zacian to kind of get around the Cornerstone Ogerpon, just to have an attacker that doesn't have an ability, so just a unique tech specifically for that one card. And there were some builds that even played the Reverum, which kind of acted as a draw engine and also mixed with like lightning energy, so you could discard them and bring them back with Levencia. Those are like the 5 or 6 main ways that I saw kind of looking at the deck lists. I'm sure there were some other Gholdengos, but out of the ones that made day 2, those are kind of the top ones that I saw. I think the other big surprise of day 1 was the lack of Grimmsnarl overall. I know myself personally, I was kind of hyped up on this deck. I thought this was going to be a popular pick or just a deck that did really well, but we really didn't see a lot of top players opting for Grimmsnarl. I really don't think any of the top players really played Grimmsnarl, and it was like 5% of the meta share, so it really didn't show up at all. It's still obviously a very good deck, but it didn't even make top 32 at the event, which I think is a crazy upset. Like, I really didn't think that this deck would do so badly. I'm really surprised not to see it at the top, but I guess it kind of makes sense because a lot of people really kind of learned the matchup and knew how to play around it. Plus, it seems to have kind of a harder time against Gholdengo sometimes, so, you know, running into Gholdengo all day, I'm sure was not fun. But while some decks underachieved, the other decks overachieved, and in this case it was most definitely Charizard Pidgeot. Throughout day 1 and day 2, we got to watch Oyvind's magical run with Charizard Pidgeot going undefeated in day 1 and just kind of dominating overall across the board. This again wasn't necessarily a popular pick into the meta. Into this tournament specifically, there wasn't a lot of Charizard players, but we did see 2 in the top 8, which I think is very impressive for the deck. And overall, Charizard's still a very solid deck. Obviously the big problem is Badoo and getting item locked. It makes it very difficult to set up, and we saw that later on in the tournaments. But you know, besides that, it's just a really good deck overall. Just being able to search for any card and being able to do so much damage and being strong against decks like Gardevoir is just always a good thing. And I think especially at a tournament like this where Gholdengo is the dominant deck that doesn't really play Badoo, it is a smart pick overall because you do have options to even deal with Gholdengo, like the Chi-Yu, which does super effective damage whenever you get a Pokemon knocked out. And even though Dragapult was still a popular pick, you know, besides Dragapult, you really were doing pretty good against most other matchups. Obviously the Badoo is a struggle, but again, Gholdengo was the popular deck this weekend. And the last big thing I want to point out about day one is the fact that a lot of the top players obviously did not make it into day two, and is, you know, as to be expected. It's the World Championships, a lot can happen, a lot of good players are there obviously, but yeah, players like Tor didn't make it, Azul didn't make it. Kind of sad to see, but you know, overall, still really good runs. You know, it's the World Championships, nothing to be ashamed of. And I'm sure we'll hear and see more about that later on this week. Going into day two, the Gholdengo meta share went up even higher at 30%. Basically, 1 out of every 3 players is playing Gholdengo going into day two, which is insane to think about. But again, just a really good deck, very popular, a lot of different builds of it, so you kind of have that surprise factor behind it too. Looking at the decks that made day two, we had no Crustle, we had no Typhlosion, no Roaring Moon, no Archaladon, no Garchomp, no Toadstool. Out of all those decks I just mentioned, I would have said Crustle would have definitely made day two, and maybe a Typhlosion or two. To be honest, I don't even know if anyone played Typhlosion. I haven't seen anything about Typhlosion, and it seems like it would have been a decent play considering about all the Gholdengos out there, but against everything else, you're just kind of struggling sometimes. But I do think Typhlosion could have had a deep run if a top player would have piloted it. The other surprising one on there for me is Archaladon. This is a deck that's not super good right now, but it is one of those decks that's just kind of like, you know what I mean? Just kind of surprised not to see it at all. I would have thought that somebody would have played it and been able to make day two, but I guess not. And even though Crustle didn't make day two, we did see a Walls deck make day two. This is the classic Walls deck with like Farigiraf and Milotic. It's kind of a throwback. I feel like we haven't seen anything with this deck, you know, outside of Japan back in the day, whenever those cards kind of like first became popular. So it is really cool to see Walls making day two, but yeah, really besides that, there was no other kind of like wall or like stall strategies really. Well, I take that back. We do have a couple decks that are like kind of in that same nature. One of them being Blissey from the world champion of last year, Fernando Cifuentes, ended up making day two again, trying to go on the run for the back-to-back championship. Wasn't able to do it, unfortunately, but his brother made an even deeper run, Marco Cifuentes, making it into top cut, almost making it into the top 4 with Zoroark, a very interesting deck that actually 2 of them made top cut this year, which is very surprising to say. I don't think anyone was really expecting Zoroark to make top cut necessarily. Especially with the way that they built the deck. Very interesting builds. Really all the Zoroarks that did good ended up not playing any of the Darmanitan lines, so really Zoroark is only able to copy En's Reshiram and nothing else. Kind of opting for like a poison style build where you're basically just trying to live hits and deal that damage back. You're really reliant on like Blood Moon Ursaluna to be your big attacker at the end. You have the Toadstool to kind of deal with Gholdengo. So just overall really interesting build, a deck that we really wouldn't have expected, I would say, to make top cut. Obviously, you know, it's a deck that I would say could make day 2, but I wouldn't expect it to make top 16, that's for sure. And Mateus ended up making a little bit deeper of a run, and also including a couple of interesting tech cards like the Wellspring Mask Ogerpon, specifically for Sob, and also the Cornerstone Ogerpon, just to kind of deal with things like Gholdengo. Again, a very interesting deck, definitely my standout deck of the weekend, one that I think was kind of the biggest surprise going into top cut. A couple of other decks that made top 32 that I want to quickly shout out are going to be Ho-Oh Box, a deck that is actually pretty strong in my opinion, just a combination of a lot of random attackers that are able to deal with a lot of really good decks in the formats. Ended up making top 32. And also Alex Shemansky with Terra Box, another deck that's been kind of on the rise recently, I would say. Kind of these ogre builds. This one's kind of just more traditional Terra Box, it looks like, but just overall kind of a strong deck because a lot of decks cut Shaman. And the last thing I want to mention about day 2 was the unfortunate prize card situation, which we saw play out a few different times on stream, starting off with Piper, where it happened 2 different games. So in one game she ended up prizing both Genesect EX, very unfortunate, kind of towards the top of the prizes as well, so just kind of unable to find those. And going into game 3 she prized 3 Gimmighoul, which is pretty much impossible to win against Raging Bolt. It's just very difficult when Raging Bolt has the ability to just snipe your bench, so pretty much Once the baby Raging Bolt is set up, you can't do anything. Very unfortunate luck and a very unfortunate end to an overall solid run, just a very impressive run, like I said. We also saw this kind of play out with Justin Newdorf, who ended up making finals. He ended up actually winning this game, but again, unfortunate pricing, priced all 3 Dragapults. The way that it kind of set up actually worked out in his favor, where he was able to just kind of scoop up the Dragapults as he went on. Able to just, you know, build up his board pretty much, and then once he got his first Dragapult, he was pretty much good to go to actually win the game. But still, just kind of crazy to see how these prize cards ended up. And going into Championship Sunday, we saw some really good matchups. So starting off in the junior division, we did see Raging Bolt versus Dragapult Dusknoir, kind of a classic matchup, and it ended up being the Raging Bolt that ended up winning. Again, we saw it again, the baby Raging Bolt just pulling off the snipes, basically preventing Jose from setting up at all. But I think the biggest story came out of our seniors division, where we saw Gabriel Fernandez trying to go for the perfect season, ended up winning NAIC, winning EUIC and LAIC this season. The only thing missing was the World Championships, and he ended up 1 game away. It went to a game 3 situation. He ended up losing to a player from China, and I've got to remind you guys, in China right now, they're not even playing the same format as us. So I think that makes his win even more impressive, because it's just very different when you're playing in a different format to try to go somewhere else and just play a whole different format. I can imagine that's very difficult, and we ended up seeing that here, which was really cool. And Fuguan ended up playing the Gholdengo Joltik combination that I mentioned earlier, so we got to really see the deck play out and how strong it is, especially into a deck like Zoroark. Very interesting matchup, but I do feel like the Gholdengo Joltik kind of has the answers to deal with it. Just kind of an interesting combination that just seems to kind of work. And going into the Masters division, we ended up seeing the classic matchup of Gardevoir versus Dragapult, and of course, Gardevoir is what takes it all. No surprise there. Gardevoir really does pretty well against Dragapult. Obviously has a little bit of a tougher time when Dusknoir is involved, but overall Riley was able to pretty dominantly win this, I would say. I don't think it was really that close, to be honest. Riley was just able to kind of dominate this set, to be honest. And as much as I wanted to see Dragapult win it all, I mean, it's pretty fitting, I would say, for Gardevoir to win it all in its last regulation, where it's going to be legal. It does rotate out after this Worlds, which I kind of just keep forgetting. That's going to rotate along with Charizard, Pidgeot, and those cards. I think it's kind of the perfect way to kind of close that chapter of Gardevoir. And yeah, I mean, we'll see it for a few more months, and after that, it'll be gone. Yeah, that's pretty much all the big stuff that happened at the event. Let me know if I missed anything. Obviously, more stuff happened, but this is the recap of all the big points I feel like that I got to see, at least. And again, very exciting overall. I watched most of the streams, a chance to watch a lot of the games, just high-level gameplay overall. I mean, it's the World Championships, of course, but overall, it was a great event. I'm looking forward to next year in San Francisco. Hopefully, I'll get to go there. That would be amazing. We'll see what happens, though, and yeah, let me know in the comments what your favorite moments were, and let me know if you enjoyed the video. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Hope you all have a great one.